I think it's coming live. There. Okay, it's live
Okay.
now. Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing well. And once again, see y'all again. I just interviewed Thesha a few minutes ago, Thesha Jenkins. So please check out that video. But as I promised, we were going to have Pamela Reaves here, and we're going to talk about basically business, commercial real estate, and things like that. And Pamela Reeves is going to give you her background. And also, we're going to talk about business a little bit and how being a successful entrepreneur, business owner, how important it is to just know who you are and have your self-esteem intact, and having and exemplifying that power that we know that we all have as leaders. And Pamela Reeves is no stranger to the world of corporate America, so we want her to give us some tips. We're going to talk, and I'm going to ask her some questions about this industry of actually for his real estate and business and things like that too as well. So hey Pam, how long have you been here in the world of in corporate America, holding your own weight
Well,
in the
actually,
industry?
I've been in corporate America probably 45 years.
Yeah, okay,
Probably 40,
45 years.
probably 45 years. Yes.
Yes, yes, and now previous, and I when I've interviewed her before, she kind of gave you the story. So some of you may not have heard that interview a few years back, but we talked about how she came to be the only, what, it was the only female in office at one time. Is that correct? Or
Well,
it was,
no, well, with that particular, that was the C-suite.
okay.
Um, and so what I was probably that company originally, the company that existed when I first went there, it was established in 1912.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the C-suite, I was the uh, the second black person who had been there.
Mm-hmm.
The first was in basically a supporting position,
Mm-hmm.
but
Okay.
a professional position. I was the first.
Okay, okay,
Yes,
got you. Okay, okay, yeah. Okay, now let's talk about the commercial real estate, the
yes,
state, I guess the state of it, in the future.
yes,
We want to talk about 2024 and what
yes,
is from your expertise and your experience. And I mean, you've in it, about it,
yes.
a lot about it. Even when you and I have had our private conversations, you've mentioned a lot to me. You've taught me a lot about commercial real estate, for is how it's your, and just knowing what you need to do and be aware of for its contracts, and
Well,
just doing the right thing. Because if, and then, is it a wise thing to do the count the cost to get in a brick and mortar before you get in over your head? So this is what I want to educate, want you to educate our
well,
entrepreneurs that, well, maybe listen to the replay about this commercial real estate arena. And it's, one, is nothing to play with. You got to be serious
mm-mm.
about it, and don't get into something that is going to cause your business to really suffer in the long run.
Yeah.
So we just, some things like that. So you kind of, if I think of some, where I think of some questions, I'll definitely ask them of you
Okay.
as you're speaking. So go ahead
Yeah.
and
Well, I've been incredibly blessed because I've been on both sides of the negotiating table. For about 18 years, I represented the tenant, and during that period, I was representing a subsidiary of Citigroup. At that time, it was called City Financial, and I was
mm-hmm,
managing a group that was called Lease and Contract Negotiations. When I was managing that group, when I left, we had 2,400 locations in the portfolio, and we had a contingency liability of $84 million.
oh
So
wow,
that was a big responsibility. And as you can see, when you have that type of responsibility and with those dollars, you have to be very careful about the contracts that you sign.
mm-hmm,
So Citigroup was a global tenant. And so that was an experience because not only was our portfolio throughout the United States, it
mm-hmm,
also was included Canada. And that's a whole different market.
mm,
It's a whole different market. It was interesting because we did business in Quebec and they
Wow.
are French speaking. They rather so, but it
Mm,
was doable because what I did was I hired an outside real estate company, and they were the interface. And
mm,
so when there was a lease negotiation, they would negotiate it, and they would come back with the landlord's comments, of course, translating everything into English. And I
right.
would tell them, what I would accept and what I would reject. So
Mm-hmm,
as I said, it was phenomenal. I
mm-hmm,
left Citigroup and I went and I decided to go to the landlord side.
mm.
And initially, I went to a company that did the outlets, the shopping outlets. And of course, all of my friends were like, oh my God, that's a setup because I love fashion. But I will tell you this, the world of real estate, especially shopping centers, it is so serious. I didn't even want to look at a shopping center when I was,
Really?
it was so, and I will say there are so many layers to commercial real estate. That is why I say if you are contemplating bricks and mortar, there's a lot of investigation, a lot of analytical studies that you should perform. There's just so much to consider. I know that, as small business people, we get excited. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like a big accomplishment when you can, come on social media and show the store,
Yeah.
that you just got the keys, and you take people on this virtual tour, and that's exciting, but there are so many layers to this. It's not for the faint of heart, and there are so many pitfalls to avoid. If you want to enjoy your business, it pays to know more about this discipline, this industry. Some people even think, well, I had a broker who just connected with the landlord, and he or she, they were the interface, and they had the conversations. But to be honest, with a broker, you're going to have, it's just going to be straightforward. What is the rent? How long is your lease? And
Right.
just the basic things.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to a lease contract itself, that's where you can get into a lot of trouble because so many things impact your tenancy. And that's why I always caution people, be careful. Make sure that bricks and mortar will work for you.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. There's no one answer for, I
Mm-hmm.
always say, the shoe doesn't fit everyone. There's no one size fit all. But
Right.
just consider what your business is and if you are better off bricks and mortar or online. But as things have gone in the last few years,
Mm-hmm.
even if you are bricks and mortar, still have an online presence.
Right.
you know
Okay.
still still have an online presence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so let's talk about the cost, and you and I had this conversation. A person may get excited and say, well, the landlord told me that the rent is $1,000 a month,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know and as I said to you, is the rent $1,000 a month, or if that is the base rent?
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean is the base rent is just what it is by definition, base. And then there's several structures of a lease. In a shopping center or a mall, you're probably going to have what they call a triple net rent lease. And what that means is you're going to pay the base rent, you're going to pay a proportionate share of taxes, real estate taxes, insurance, and what we call common area maintenance charges. And a person may say, well, why do I have to pay taxes, insurance, or the common area maintenance charges? Well, the reason for that is because the landlords, this is industry wise, and if it's in a shopping center or mall, I'll get to a gross lease later.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's in a mall or shopping center, all of the tenants benefit from that. You benefit from the foot traffic that comes there. You
Mm-hmm.
benefit having the landlord to have the areas cleaned up, shoveled in the snow. So if the tenants benefit from it, the landlord says, okay, you're going to pay your proportionate share. That's
Mhm.
a triple net lease. You're paying base rent, you're
Mhm.
paying your proportionate share of the
Mhm.
taxes, and you're paying your proportionate share of the common areas. They used to do it in the old days. The insurance would be separate, but now the insurance is built into the common area charge.
Mhm. Okay.
So that is a triple net rent. So that's why if you're having a conversation with the landlord, understand if you are negotiating a triple net lease or a gross lease. A gross lease means that in that rent that's quoted to you, everything is included. The insurance, the taxes, and the common area. That's the difference. You know that everything is paid. Now, gross leases, you find that a lot in office buildings
Oh,
because
okay.
everybody is in that one building, and and the landlord likes to have more control over that. That landlord cleans the bathrooms. They do all of the things, some of the things the tenant would do in a triple net.
Mhm.
But be careful when you're looking at a lease. Don't get excited and say, "Oh, he's only charging me $1,000." Make
Right.
sure if that's all you have,
Hmm.
you need to know whether or not it's base or a triple net rent.
Okay.
You know, don't go into a commercial lease just by the seat of your pants. You should have money in reserve for unforeseen things because something else that happens is what we call year end adjustments. So you may say, I'm paying my proportionate share of taxes every month with the base rent. I'm paying my proportionate share of the common area maintenance charges, which in the industry we call CAM.
Mhm.
Then you get this bill at the end of the year or at the beginning of the next year, and the landlord says, you owe me more money for CAM or you owe me more money for taxes. And you, what? I've been paying all along.
Right.
Well, that CAM that you've been paying and the
Mhm.
taxes, that was an estimated cost. The
Right.
landlord estimates that. And
Mm.
then at the end of the year, we have what you call year-end reconciliations. So if the landlord, before he had or she had to pay their taxes, they gave you an estimate, and now they've gotten their actual tax bill, then they're going to look at that and they're going to determine if the tenant paid too much or not enough.
Mhm.
If the
And
tenant paid too much, the landlord is going to do two things, and it depends on how you negotiated your lease. The landlord is either going to take that overage and credit it to your account for the next year. If you didn't pay enough, then the landlord wants the difference.
mm.
And he wants the difference. As I told you, I knew someone who got a tax bill and was really upset because
Mhm.
she felt I've been paying all along. I asked to see her lease, and when I saw the lease language, the landlord had the right at the end of the year to
Mhm.
come back and do the necessary adjustments. So
Mhm.
those are costs that you have to consider and be ready for it. You know,
Wow.
you have to, pay your utility bills, understand what's involved in, and you pay that directly to the utility company, unless in the lease you've
Mm.
agreed that you would pay it to the landlord.
Oh, wow.
That's why you have to take those leases apart and
Mm.
know what you're getting into, because you could think that you're paying, that your expense is going to be $1,000 a month,
Mhm.
and when you factor in all of these other things, you could be over $2,000 a month.
Yeah, because a lot of yes, because a lot of times I think even I know even in, let's say, the beauty industry, what I'm into, like when they lease buildings, everybody want to get a brick and mortar to, and you need one if you're having a working in a salon. And I
Right.
think they really need to know this. Yeah, this information.
And Sandy, and depending on the shopping center, if you're in an area where there are a lot of small shopping centers,
Mhm.
and let's say when they calculate what your utilities will be,
Mhm.
now someone who's doing hair may have a high water bill.
Yes.
because the landlord is going to base your bill on usage,
Yeah.
not just this proportionate share where they divide it out to all the tenants equally.
Exactly.
Because some tenants, if it's a savvy tenant, and let's say I sell books, and I know that Sandy's in the shopping center. If I'm a savvy tenant, I'm going to say, well, I want you to carve out, I don't want Sandy's included when you calculate it because she
Hmm.
uses more water than the other tenants.
Exactly.
And so now, how that may be resolved, then you get sub metered or you get a separate meter for your space.
Well, do they? But they don't explain that to you, though, right? Most.
Well, that's why you have to know what you're asking, what to ask
Mhm.
for. Some people, they're broke. Some potential tenants, their broker may,
Right.
educate them like that. But if you are, a high water
Right.
user, then
Mhm.
you're probably going to pay. You're either going to pay more than the other tenants, or the landlord is going to suggest in your lease that you're either sub-metered or
Mm.
you get separately metered.
Got you. Okay. All righty.
And
Yeah.
so that's how a high water user would
Right.
resolve that issue. You either get sub-metered so they can read you separately,
Mhm.
or they will have you to get separately metered
Mhm.
so that everybody knows what your costs are and
Yeah.
they're not factored into
Mhm.
everybody else. And like I
Mhm.
said, and me, if I'm selling books, I don't want Sandy in the equation. She's using too much water.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
That's so
so,
true.
so separately meter her out, separate her
Mhm.
so that the rest of the tenants don't get caught with a higher bill because of this
Mhm.
high water user. But
Exactly.
those are the things, like I said, those are the things sometimes when you're not a savvy tenant, why would you know? Why
Mhm.
would you know to question it?
Mhm.
And sometimes, especially our community. I've like sometimes just shut it and said, oh God, let them have someone who's counseling them because me working for a landlord, I can't, really
Yeah.
give them their legal advice.
Yeah.
I may keep suggesting, and I did this with someone when I, because she kept threatening to send her attorney to me, and I kept saying, send them. I need to talk to them. After a while, the light came on. She doesn't have an attorney.
Wow.
So at that point, I would just, without going to her side of the negotiating table, like, no, you don't want this, have a conversation with someone else. And unfortunately, this was a person who spent her retirement to get this space for her daughter,
Oh,
and she
wow.
went under.
Ooh, no.
And part of the reason is this is something else that you must consider. Just because you see a beautiful shopping center,
Listen, everybody.
you have to do your due diligence. Does your potential client visit that shopping center?
Mm-hmm.
What is the foot traffic there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you want to sell pottery in some place where most people buy furniture, you're going under.
Mm-hmm.
It may be beautiful, it may be close to your home, you like the way it looked, but you have to consider the foot traffic. Then
Mm-hmm.
you may want to go out and look at the demographics for that area.
Mm-hmm.
How do people spend their money? Do they spend their money on my goods and services that I
Mm-hmm.
offer? If
Mm-hmm.
in that area that's not a lot of that going on, you're wasting your time. But then again, now, because this is an ever evolving discipline, that's why it pays to also have an online presence.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So
definitely.
no matter where they are,
Mm-hmm.
they can get your product or your service.
Mm-hmm. And also too, Pam, I know here in Augusta they have there's a mattress shop. There's a mattress. I'm sorry, a mattress. They have a brick and mortar location,
Mhm.
and I believe that they have contracts with probably the hospitals here or wherever, because the
Okay.
hospitals are the and they've
Right.
still been able to keep them doors open simply
Right.
because, and like you said, you got to have an online presence, but you got to
Yeah.
have something else that's going to help you
Yeah.
pay that high rent,
And then that's a good business model. Okay, let's go out here. Let's
Mm-hmm.
target hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And so, hospitals do fairly well.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if they're all for profit, but that mattress tenant is
Mm-hmm.
has a backup.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are times, because guess what? Outside of contracts with the hospital, how many times are people going and buying mattresses?
Exactly. So I know.
Mattresses, don't they have warranties for 20 years?
Right. Exactly.
So you had better have another avenue, another
Exactly.
income generating discipline to your business.
That's right.
Not just, don't be, just this singular focus, that you should be having something, and that's awesome. you
Mm-hmm.
know I know of a caterer during COVID. He picked up the hospitals because people weren't given events then, remember?
Right.
Because you had those numbers, those restrictions on the numbers of how many people could go into that type of venue. So
Mm-hmm.
during that period, he picked up hospitals who wanted lunches delivered, and he said he was doing well during that period.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Here's somebody commenting and say, as an entrepreneur looking to soon move my company into a brick and mortar, this information has been very useful. Thanks so much, Dr. Pamela Reeves.
I
Yeah,
am
that's
so glad I could be
Sumter's
of
RJ,
help.
RJ Sumter. Yeah. Okay.
Hi,
Thank you for
RJ.
the comment. Yeah.
Thank
Uh-huh.
you for that comment.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes, but that is so important. But yeah, like I said, we need to know this about this commercial real estate, because it's, yeah, you've given me a lot of nuggets the other night. When we
Yeah.
spoke about it. Yes, yes,
I,
definitely.
as I said, it's challenging, but I love it because I've been on both sides of the negotiating table. I've
Mm-hmm.
negotiated for the tenant, I've negotiated for the landlord. So I can sit on either side of the table, and a lot of times my negotiating sessions go smoothly because I understand. Now, let's say if I had just been with a landlord and the tenant pops up with, there's something called going dark.
Mm.
Landlords don't like you to go dark. They don't like you to close, and you still got a lease. They're adamant about that.
I'll say
So,
going
but
dark. Explain that a little bit further now.
going dark means that once you get into a lease,
Uh-huh.
you cannot close down, except for like if there was a fire or you were transferring, product or something. But let's just say you said, well, my business isn't doing well, so I'm just going to close. Well, you want that business decision, but your lease, you're still bound to your lease.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
You're still bound to your lease. And so a landlord doesn't want you to go dark. Now, when I was with a tenant, so let me go back. A landlord who's never been with a tenant, all they know is how that impacts the shopping center.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like dark spaces. First of all, that's not attractive.
Right.
And for potential tenants, why do I want to go to a shopping center where there are a lot of dark spaces?
Oh
That
yeah.
means
Make
something's up.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. So landlords are big on that, not going dark. But tenants who have a lot of negotiating power or who are savvy,
Mm-hmm.
they'll say, okay, I need to go dark. Now, I was with a global tenant, so they had money. They had $1 trillion balance sheet. So they
Mm-hmm.
didn't care. But so what we would do, we
$1 trillion.
would we would negotiate the right to go dark, and the clause is called continuous occupancy. So
Mm.
that's what you look for in your lease. And and someone who is not savvy may just like gloss over that. Oh, it says you got to operate on these days and hours, but there's something behind that. If that is established in the lease, you just can't stop doing business, because you're probably not a strong tenant. The big tenants, the global tenants, the national tenants, they have the leverage because they have the money. They'll say, well, I'm going to close anyway. Well, the thing to do is to negotiate a right to go dark up front. The
Mm.
smaller tenant probably doesn't have that kind of leverage
Right.
because the bigger tenant is going to say, I'll continue to pay you the rent. I just won't because, and then you may say, well, if you're going to continue to pay the rent, you may as well stay open. Well, if a large tenant closed and they're just paying the rent, they're no longer probably, and let's say if they closed a branch office, they're no longer paying salaries, they're no longer paying all of those operating expenses. So it is
Mm-hmm.
beneficial to close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But a smaller tenant who just may be struggling and I can't meet the rent, I just want to close, you still are bound to that lease.
Yes. Okay.
You can't go dark.
And so
So
that's
the
why they
thing to
want.
do is to be honest, go
Mm-hmm.
to your landlord, have the conversation, and see if there's a way out. Can I buy out? Can you just repossess the space? Because that landlord may have another tenant, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and a good landlord knows, well, I'm just not going to fight with this tenant because if they can't pay the rent, they can't pay the rent. So I want the space back so I can make money on the space. So let me move on and go to someone else.
Okay. Okay. So that's why most of them want you to possibly do a 5-year lease or 10-year. You know, they
Well,
like
they,
you.
they want a commitment. But if
Uh-huh.
you are a shaky tenant, you don't want to go that far, or if
Mm-hmm.
you a new tenant or if you just come to the area.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably best at least to do 3 years, 3 to 5 years, your initial term, and then negotiate maybe 1 or 2 renewal options. And
Right.
they are options.
Right.
You don't have to take those, but he or she is probably going to work with you more with the rent. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, who wants to just give it to somebody, say, oh, I just want a year? I had
Right.
someone to say, someone who wanted to get into a building and with a partner, and there was this mention of, well, I just asked, well, why can't we just do a year and see how it goes? And I'm like, nobody, no link will see the shopping center. That's the
Mm-hmm.
landlord's business. So
Mm-hmm.
he or she wants steady business.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he or she agree to 1 year
Right.
and have to
Exactly.
keep putting the space on the market?
Mm-hmm.
So a new tenant, or let's say if you're new to the area and you're not sure, you may ask the landlord, well, can I do 3 years with a 5-year option? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
and so he or she may, is going to work with you to do that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's best to be honest. If you are in trouble, don't keep trying to avoid the landlord. Go
Mm-hmm.
to them and have a conversation, because landlords will work with you, the good ones. They will work with you. There are different types of relief. You know what I mean? He or
Mm-hmm.
she may say, well, I'll reduce the rent for a year for you. And when you get back on your feet, then we'll go back to full rent.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different types of relief. You just have to be honest about
Mm-hmm.
what your situation is,
Mm-hmm.
because the landlord doesn't want to deal with someone who can't make the rent and
Mm-hmm.
they haven't figured out what your problem is.
Right.
And especially if it's a larger landlord, they don't know what your personal problems are. It's like tenants are almost just like a number. I got too many tenants to just
Right.
focus. But if you come to me and have the conversation with me,
Mm-hmm.
how can you work with me? Landlord, can you give me some type of rent relief?
Mm-hmm.
That landlord is going to, and especially the larger landlords. You may
Yes.
think the larger landlords may be the nicer ones, because
Right.
they understand so much about the industry,
Right.
you
Exactly.
know.
Okay.
And so have your conversations, but be honest about who you are. Be honest about what you have. Landlords, when you approach a landlord, some of them are going to ask for your balance sheets, and they don't
Yeah.
want to just see 1 year. They probably want to see your balance sheet for the last 3 years,
Yeah.
because they want to make sure that 1 year wasn't a fluke.
Mm-hmm.
That there is some consistency.
Consistency. Wow. You hear that? Yeah. Balance sheets. Wow. See, a lot of people don't realize that. Yes, they did. Yeah, because I've had that experience. So they even want to see a business plan for the
Yes,
most part.
yes, yeah. A balance sheet,
Mm-hmm.
your credit report. They want to
Mm-hmm.
see all of that because they
Mm-hmm.
want to feel or have some level of comfort
Yes.
that they are getting a good tenant.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Now,
And
what?
so if you're
Go ahead.
unsure about that, don't put yourself through that stress.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Or there are different types of shopping centers. You
Oh
can
yeah.
go for the power center or you can go for a strip center.
Mm-hmm.
Go, and maybe you belong in a small strip center until your balance sheet is looking so good and you've grown your business and you say, now I can handle, a larger shopping center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I said communication is always the key. Certain issues are unavoidable. Face the
Yes.
magic, and you may realize that people may help. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
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 Absolutely. Yes. And then also, what about the co-working spaces? There was a lot of that going on one time, and I think there was some issue in the news not too long ago about the co-working space. Or was it someone that it was a company that had issues with that co-working space situation? I don't know whether they weren't charging, they were overcharging, or something was going on with that. I can't remember what it was, Pam, but anyway,
Well, now it probably, well, was this before or after COVID? Because
this
I
was after
know.
COVID. This was after COVID,
Oh,
not too long
okay.
ago. Uh-huh.
Because it was that some of them were like really desperate after COVID. Because if
Mm,
I used to have my office for my business in one of those big buildings, office
really?
buildings, and but when COVID hit, I was like, okay, I'm gonna bring it home, and so now I just love this office I've created at home. But that company, I'm telling you, I've seen signage up on top of the building. The rates are super low because they were really hit by COVID. Because guess what? Most office tenants, their employees are working from home. Everybody's not in the office every day.
Mm,
Even those who are back, their business models are hybrid. Like certain employees, you can come work 2 days a week,
mm,
3 days a week. So they don't need the space that they used to need.
mm,
So COVID impacted the office buildings more than any, well, adversely,
mm.
more than any other. I mean, those office buildings in New York were taking
Oh,
a
really?
beating, yes, because those tenants, those big tenants that could afford to be in there, actually are probably the type of tenant that
Mm-hmm.
has the resources to allow their employees to work from home.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
same employee that can, I mean, the same company that can afford a big fancy office building. Think about it. That's
Mm-hmm.
the company that has the money and has the ability and the resources for their people to work at home.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't need all of that space. So that's a cost saving for those
Yes,
companies.
definitely. Oh, yeah. I can
Instead of
imagine.
going in paying 40, 50, 60, $70,000 a month in rent, oh, I don't have to do that anymore
Mm-hmm.
because my people are working from home,
Mm-hmm.
or we're on a hybrid schedule, so I can
Mm-hmm.
go into a smaller space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to lease as much space.
Mm. Wow.
It's amazing how things that happen in the market can impact some of everything.
Yes.
Because it was one time speculated that Best Buy was going to start going into smaller spaces, because now you have laptops,
Mm-hmm.
tablets,
Mm-hmm.
phones. They don't need all of the space that they used to have.
Yes.
So of course, that's not good news for a landlord,
Yeah,
because
right.
where a Best Buy probably used to do 200,000 square feet, they don't need to do that anymore. They
Mm-hmm.
don't need all of that space.
Yeah. I know here in Xfinity, Comcast, what we're gonna call it, they've gone into smaller
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, they
They've
don't need
gone.
they don't need to, because technology impacted all of that. We don't need all of the equipment that you used to,
Mm-hmm.
and even though we're back to work, well, a lot of employers are deciding, okay, let's do the hybrid thing. You
Mm-hmm.
come in 3 times a week, you come in 2 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not going back to everybody is coming in at least 5 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how COVID has impacted the
Mm-hmm.
marketplace.
Wow. Yes. Definitely with commercial
Yeah,
real estate. So
yeah.
so you
Oh,
think,
and let's talk about the guarantee too.
oh, go ahead.
Um,
We all
about, especially in the smaller tenants, where a landlord asks you for a guarantee.
mm-hmm.
You know, as a business person, we establish our business, our legal vehicle, so we can separate our liability, the business, from personal.
Yes.
But in commercial real estate, if they are not satisfied of how your financial strength, that landlord may ask you for a personal guarantee.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
that may ask you for a personal guarantee. So you have to understand that
Uh-huh.
that
Oh,
because maybe if your balance sheet is strong enough and you
right.
can support, then you say, well, Mr. Landlord, I have a strong balance sheet, and look at my financial statements over the last 3 years, and I'm consistent. But if they are not totally comfortable with your balance sheet or
Mhm.
with you as a tenant, you in the marketplace, that landlord may ask for a guarantee, a personal guarantee.
Wow. And so what do you say going dark? What you call it? Going dark, or what do you say?
Going
Black
dark is
space.
when you close. Yeah,
Yeah,
a dark
the black
space.
space, the dark space.
Yeah, or you may look in a lease if you see continuous occupancy, and
Right.
that is the obligation to continue to operate.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, what if somebody end up having to go dark? Having to go dark, and they have a personal guarantee. So what's going to happen is they're going to default or whatever, and then they'll mess up their personal credit and well too, right?
But see, that's one. Well, let's go back to the being honest.
Right. Right.
If you were honest and you approached the landlord long before you got to, because the landlord is going to try to work with you.
Uh-huh.
The guarantor is there as a backup. You know, if all else fails and this
Right.
tenant, I can't get this tenant to pay rent, they're ducking me, they're not paying then the landlord is going to go against the guarantor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if you are working with the landlord in good faith, fairness, and reasonableness, that landlord is not going to immediately to
Mm.
probably go to the guarantor.
Okay.
But once again, that's why you have to be careful before you commit. You
Mm-hmm.
know, before you commit, if you sit down when you're contemplating going into bricks and mortar, before you go to the landlord as a tenant, you should have been playing out those scenarios.
Right.
What if this happens? What if that happens? Even like, well, let me consider the unforeseen. You don't know what it is, but let me consider if the unforeseen happens, what is my strategy?
Yes.
Especially if I'm going to commit to signing a personal guarantee. You
Mm-hmm.
may want to keep looking until you can find a landlord who won't demand a personal
Yeah.
guarantee.
Wow.
That may not be the landlord for you.
Mm.
That may not be the landlord for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But if that comes up and that's not the landlord for you, maybe you should do some self evaluation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Why is this causing me so much heartburn?
Mm-hmm.
Why does this scare me so much?
Yeah.
Well, some of the answers could be that I'm really not financially secure to handle this right now, to go into this shopping center or to do a bricks and mortar. Maybe I need to keep saving. Maybe I need to look for someone else. But like I said, if that question comes up to
Mm-hmm.
you,
Mm-hmm.
consider self too in
Mm-hmm.
all of this.
Exactly.
Consider
Okay.
self as well.
Yes. All right. Sumter asks, can you explain more about a personal guarantee?
As a personal guarantee is an agreement where an individual or a group of individuals, and you can even have a corporate guarantee, where they agree that if the tenant defaults on the lease, that the landlord can come to the guarantor to cure the default or pay up. You are legally responsible to let. That's what a guarantee is. Now, there are different ways to even negotiate a guarantee. You may have a rolling guarantee, and what that means, let's say if it was a rolling 12 month, then you would then let's say maybe for if you had a 5 year lease, for the first 3 years, if the tenant goes, bust, the landlord can come to the guarantee for everything. But you may say in your negotiations, Mr. Landlord, Miss Landlord, corporate landlord, after 3 years in this 5 year lease, if I've been diligently paying my rent, can I get a 12-month rolling? What that means is that the landlord will agree that if anything happens, that the tenant won't have to pay any more than 12 months rent, instead of, let's say, if it was 3 years left on there. You can do things like that. Ask for a rolling guarantee, or somebody who was really strong would actually that it burns off, which means that it just goes away after 5 years. But
Yeah.
normally you have to have a lot of negotiating leverage. You have to have a really strong balance sheet.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
you
but
said.
if the landlord, like I said, the smaller tenants who they're not sure, the reason why they do it is because they don't have the might that the larger tenant will. And, of course, what we try to do is we enter those contracts under our LLC or company. Well, the landlord has no way to regroup unless they go to somebody. And what you do is like, okay, I want a personal guarantee. Sometimes there have been tenants who were franchisees who got and this has to do with the franchisor to what their business model
Mm-hmm.
is that you get a corporate guarantee, that you get the corporate, this franchise, to
Mm.
back you up.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Subway is actually owned by a group, it's Physicians something.
Hmm.
They add the franchisor actually enters, then this is their business model. The franchisor enters, which is the physicians group, they enter the lease directly, and then they sublease it to the franchisee, who is the smaller tenant, you know. And so what's happening is this physicians group, they want to make sure that if something happens to with the franchisee, that they get to step in, immediately.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Go keep talking, Pam. Go ahead.
But that is your guarantee. That is a guarantee. That means that there's some reason, nothing wrong with you, but there is some reason based on the financial information, your business model, or your experience, where the landlord feels more secure if they have a guarantee to back up the lease.
Mm.
So that is the reason for a personal guarantee.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sumter, RJ Sumter, did that help? Did that help you? Yeah, he asked that question. Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. Yeah. And also there was a couple, yeah, because you mentioned we talked more about the doc. Something I wrote down I was going to ask you, Pam. Let me see. Yeah, the contingencies and occupancy. So now, like even with the malls, so like for instance, like a lot of Sears have closed the anchor stores in the mall. Is that kind of like the same thing? Because the anchor stores have a little bit different. Yes, explain.
Well, yeah, they're different, and some anchors actually, what they do. I know J.C. Penney. It's oh my God, I want to. The building is theirs.
Right.
It's called a ground lease. I'm sorry, that word escaped me. It's a
Okay.
ground lease. So
Okay.
what they do, they're just leasing the ground. J.C. Penney, that's how they were doing, but they would build the buildings.
Oh,
And
okay.
I know with another company, I think it was Sam's Club or something years ago.
Uh-huh.
I was with another company, and they sent a bunch of letters from, it was for their national network, and it was about all these problems that were found with the roof.
Oh,
And
wow.
and they a strong company, so they were like, it better be fixed by, whenever. So I was put on the project, and when I went through their portfolio, they were all ground leases. They built their own buildings. So, I responded to them, well, it's interesting that you're telling us to fix the roof. You built the building. So it's not our responsibility. And so the response was that the letters had been sent out in error, you know. But so some of the anchor tenants, it's a ground lease. It's not the building. But it depends on where they are. Because if it's just a pad, it's not connected to anything else. Some of your anchor tenants, now that's not a mall. Because remember, a mall is not a shopping center. Some
Okay.
people some people use that interchangeably.
Right.
The shopping centers are where you see the Giants and the Sam's Clubs and the Marshalls and
Right.
TJ Maxx and that.
That's the
Those
strip
are
malls,
shopping
right?
centers.
Oh, shopping
The,
centers.
a mall is like, well, see, you in another area, but Lennox in Atlanta, up in Buckhead.
Okay,
Okay,
gotcha. Okay.
okay, that's a mall.
Okay.
Yeah, a mall a lease and a shopping center lease are not the same thing. But let me tell you about a new trend that we are seeing, and I
Uh-huh.
don't know how COVID impact, but a lot of mall tenants are starting to come to shopping centers because they are seeing that the same foot traffic that they expected in the malls in days of old, that now is coming to shopping centers.
Okay.
So that's a new trend.
Oh, okay. All righty. So we got a trend. Okay. Hello. Well, good evening, Fro 14. Yeah. So I do, yeah. So because we have like the Augusta Mall that we have here, and in this area, it's kind of because it had the Sears in there, and then Sears is no longer there, but they still have the Pennies. And I learned a lot
Yeah.
too about that too when I was working at Dillard's, and Dillard's own their own. So Macy's own their own anchor too, right?
They own the building. They are leasing the ground. That's
Right.
why they're called ground leases.
Yeah. Okay. Got you. Okay. Hmm. Okay.
But
Yeah.
now that's not mall. That's shopping center.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Now in the mall, I don't know that's probably, even though they're anchor tenants in a mall, they are their lease structure is probably like the smaller tenants anyway. I'm paying an X amount of rent. I have to pay, then they factor in what their proportionate share
Mm-hmm.
of the utilities and that. And proportionate share, let's go back to that in a shopping center. Let's say if you wanted to know what your proportionate share of the taxes. So you get the proportionate share by dividing the floor area of your space by the floor area of the shopping center.
Mm-hmm.
So if the shopping center is 100,000 square feet and you're leasing, your space is 10,000 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
divide 10,000 by 100,000, then your share is 10%.
Oh, okay.
So that's when I was saying, when in those triple net leases, these
Right.
extra things, but that's how you can kind of determine like what what you're going to be obligated to pay. And
Okay.
that's the proportionate share. Like I said,
Okay.
in the shopping centers, remember, we're not talking about malls, but the
Mm-hmm.
shopping centers, the Targets and the Marshalls and there,
Mm-hmm.
those deals are structured differently than what's in a mall.
Oh, okay. Got
They're
you.
not one in it, but we use it all the time. When we go into the mall, I'm going to the shopping center. That's
Yeah.
not the same.
Yeah, I got
That's
you.
not the same. And
Yeah.
then you have your power centers, and
Uh-huh.
your power centers are the ones anchored by Costco and Marshalls, the really big tenants.
Right.
Then
Okay.
a strip center is 10 units or less.
Okay. 10 units or less. Okay,
That's
that's the
that's
definition. That's the
that's
definition
that's
of it.
that's
Okay.
that's 10 units or less.
Okay. 10 units or less. Got you. Yeah. 10 units or less. Units or less. Gotcha. All right. So, wow. And so, like, for instance, let's say somebody wanted to do their own, build a, make me, tell me the correct word I need to use, build a probably I would say a strip mall because they probably wouldn't
So
want to.
you want to develop a mall. You want to
Yeah,
develop it.
yeah,
You want to
yeah,
develop a strip center.
yeah. Strip center. Yeah. So what will we, with I'm sure there's a lot involved in that too. But would
Yes.
someone get investors for that? For the most part, do they
If
do
you
that?
if you if you don't have the money, you had better, because it's very
But is it better?
expensive.
Really? So what if somebody have the money, but they just don't want to use? They want to use other people's money.
Well, then you should collaborate. You
Yeah,
should get
collaborate.
partners, and then of course, if you're going to do that, make sure that you have a partnership agreement too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
You
I'm
know,
sure they
where you
will.
set up like who's going to contribute what and what they're
Right.
getting out of it. How do you dissolve? How do you get rid of a partner? How do you add more
Right.
partners? But yeah, I mean
All of that.
that's a smart thing to do, And some of the larger operations, they go and get institutional investors, so they get large companies to invest in their development.
Wow. All
But
right.
of course, you're going to have to be strong before a large company is willing to come in and
That's true.
partner
Well,
with
that's
you.
true.
Money,
Yeah.
money begets money.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, exactly. Especially in that corporate world. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of like
money begets money.
yeah, like it's kind of like the real estate REIT, where I'm sure that everybody that's coming into a real estate REIT, for the most part, the big boys in it, they have to really have their money together, right?
Yeah, yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
then you have the investors after that.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. The little,
yeah.
yeah.
And because when you have those kind of setups, let's say if you're leasing, you go out and get your tenants. And
Uh-huh.
depending on the partnership, a lot of times you got to go and get the partner's approval before you finalize the lease.
Wow.
Because
Mm,
they want to have their people to look at everything and make
that's
sure,
true.
guess what, that we're going to get our return on investment.
Exactly. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's smart. And like you say, that's what the way of doing
That,
business
that
is. That's
that's the
good
way it
business.
is.
That's
That's the way
good
it is.
business. That's
Yeah.
good business. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Well, I think that is ooh, that's a lot. Any more questions, any more comments? Because I'm
We
telling you,
we have covered a lot.
yeah,
I'm
Pam
telling
is
you, there
everything.
there are layers and layers and layers to this industry. I guess that's why I still love it
Mm,
after almost 40 years. Just
woo.
the things that I have learned on both
Yeah.
sides, from
Yeah.
the ground up,
Wow.
development, leasing, law, all of it. Yeah.
Yes, real estate. Wow. I wonder why we were so, a lot of people were so afraid of, because I know you have to start from somewhere, but real estate to me, that I'm learning even more from you, and I've learned things over the years. It's so good to be and to have real estate. I wonder why most of us don't think of it. You think because we're not educated about it? Is that it?
Well, it seems like there are more of us in residential than commercial.
Right. Yes.
I'm starting to see more in commercial finally. And I'm gonna tell
Oh,
you, for years I used to wonder why, because it is so lucrative. Almost any job function, anything in commercial real estate is a lucrative career.
wow. Mm.
But I am starting to see more now.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good,
Because
good.
for years, I rarely ever heard, when in negotiating, I rarely ever heard an African American voice on the other line. But that's
Really?
but that's
That's
changing.
changing.
That is changing,
Good.
and that's a great thing. That's
Yeah,
changing.
yeah, that is
Yeah.
good. Education, the education, I guess,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
there.
and that we know certain career paths are out there, and like for for the business owners, that now that platforms like you're giving
Mhm,
is, hopefully there'll be more of that, so that we know what we're getting into,
mhm,
rather than just getting excited because we got a little bit of money. So we say, I'm going to go and open me a store.
mhm, mhm,
That we
mhm.
education is really know what you are getting, and
Yes.
even if you don't know it in its most detailed sense, but the basics,
Mhm,
like I said, just the rent thing, that
mhm,
he just told me $1,000, and
mhm, mhm, mhm.
um, know that it could be,
Yeah.
make sure of how your deal is structured, if it's a
Mhm,
gross lease or if it's a
mhm,
triple net lease, what are
mhm.
the other costs, that are could be buried in that lease.
Mm-hmm.
And not because any nefarious reasons, but
Right.
just that leases can be very complicated documents.
Yes, exactly. Because even, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit too before you go. Like one of the areas that this particular area that I wanted to lease the space for the school, right? The beauty school. Well, the gentleman told me that simply because a nail salon was getting ready to come in that same, I think it was
Uh-huh.
same area, the strip mall. I guess it was a strip center, right?
At the
Shopping
strip center.
strip center. He said that I could not do nails in the school. And
Okay, so let me tell you what that is.
tell me.
That's called an exclusive. So the nail salon was savvy enough so that their competitors don't come and take business in their lease. There's an exclusivity clause that says
Mhm,
that the landlord will not lease space to someone else who
mhm,
does nails.
mm,
That's how the nail salon was savvy enough to get
mhm,
an exclusive in their lease
mhm.
to keep their competitors away.
Right. So I can't, yeah, because
Now what you could have done
mhm.
was to ask, well, can I do nails, but that it's no more than 10% of my business?
I didn't think about that.
Because if it and just and he may say no in the
Right.
end, but see, if nails is their um if that is their sole business,
Mhm,
then nails could be incidental to your business. It's
mhm,
not your main business.
mhm.
Then you are really not there. Well, you try to get him to say to them, she's not your competitor. She's going to make sure on no more than 5% of her business is devoted to nails because she's doing hair and skin and everything else. So she's really not your competitor. But
Mhm,
once again, that goes back to their lease. Maybe in their lease, they were like, nobody does nails.
mhm. Maybe so, because I'm sure
Yeah,
that they,
but that is standard in the industry to
mhm,
attempt to get an exclusive to keep
mhm.
your competitors away,
Away. Okay.
so
Yeah.
that they don't cipher off of your business.
And that's, yeah, and it's in the
Yeah,
end that makes sense.
yeah.
It really
But
does.
like I said, what a tenant can come back, what a potential tenant can come back and ask, well, what if in my business, I agree that 5%
Mhm.
won't devote more than 5% of the business, then I'm really not going to be taking anything. But see, or that you doing nails, so they're going to be paying for the nails, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so that is their competitor. Because if it was
Mm.
just for educational purposes, then once
Yeah.
again, you're not their competitor. We're
Yeah.
just teaching people how to do nails.
Right.
But the other thing is that you could ask, like, I don't know what's in this other tenant's lease. They could have said absolutely nobody.
Mhm.
But if you're going to some place, this is just for your future knowledge.
Mhm.
You could come back and say, well, what if I only nails is only going to be incidental to my
Mhm.
business?
Okay.
It's not going to be my core business. It's
Right.
only going to be incidental. So
Incidental.
I'm really not a threat to them. And
Mhm.
I'll agree that no more
Yeah.
than 5% of
Yeah.
my sales will come from
Right.
nails.
And then
That's
I mean, yeah, and that's the only reason, because I
yeah,
mentioned to him what it was. It's going to be a school. And I saying
yeah.
yes, the services is going to be, very minimal. But he said, well, no. So I was
Mhm.
honest with him about what I was going to do, because I could,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well, the
didn't want
tenant could be a very strong
probably
tenant.
so, probably
And the
so.
lease language is strong too. They
Yes.
they made sure that they tightened up on the lease language where
Mm-hmm.
he can't consider anybody.
Anybody.
Yeah. The other thing is he still can go and ask for a consent letter
Mm,
from that tenant. And that tenant may say, well, let me see what she does. Then their consent letter will say that saying we agree that the such and such school, they can do nails as long as, and then they'll list all of their conditions,
mm-hmm.
that, they
But I
think
know
that
that,
won't threaten them.
but I
But
think it was a nail salon, one of the Korean nail salons, they wouldn't do it.
oh yeah, they weren't gonna cut any slack. Mm-mm,
They
no.
weren't gonna do
They
it.
no, they weren't gonna cut any slack. They want to make sure that no competitor can take any of their business. You
business.
know, good for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Good them. So you know that if you're going out, you know, if
Uh-huh.
you you may want to consider getting an exclusive in your lease.
Yes, yes. He says, this is Sumter RJ said, he says, thanks, Dr. Pamela Reaves. Your unmeasurable knowledge is beyond valuable to us and who are looking to start a brick and mortar business. Yes, God bless you and see you at church.
Okay, there's somebody
Yeah.
who belongs goes to my
Yeah.
church.
Love you. Love you, Roderick.
Okay. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. I know who that is. I
Yeah.
know him well. I wasn't paying really good.
Yeah.
I know him.
Yes. That's the one that asked you the question about the personal guarantee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I know him very well. I'm sorry, Roger.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I know him very well. Yeah.
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 Yes. Yes. This is a wealth of information, Pam. We thank you for this because I'm telling you, this is very, very good. I mean, Lord, we didn't even realize we needed to know so much.
Yes, yes, yes. And that is the point, Sandy. That is the point. You know, be careful. Don't get excited because grandmama left you a little bit of money and you're gonna have I'm gonna open up me a business.
Hey, all of that money, and that's why you hear somebody they say what they say. Some people, yeah, they had this money, they all of it went in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, 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 yes, yes. Yep.
Woo!
Yep. Going into a commercial space could eat you up.
Yeah. That is no joke. And then you wonder what, I mean, I don't know. To me, I think it's some of it is, I guess it's the location. To me, it's overpriced. It's like, I guess it's the location. And like you said, the foot traffic, and they
Yeah.
go by the value of
The better the center, the more
yes,
you're gonna pay.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
And
yes.
some of these fancy, you know, the more
Uh-huh.
upscale centers, hey, you're going to it is not cheap.
Ooh,
If you
right.
have any reservation, go to a little strip center or
Uh-huh.
go to somebody who may have just a building. You know how sometimes you have a building used to be a house and they converted it into two different. Go to
Right,
them. Go
right.
to them until you are strong enough to go into one of the mainstream centers.
Exactly. And have that balance sheet together too. You heard
That's
what Pam said.
that's right. That's right. Consistently, not 1 year, at least 3.
To you about 3 years. So
Yeah.
now that explains why most people are reluctant on going into the, and you really
Yeah.
they're not ready. What you're saying, we're not ready for the
No.
most part. Yeah,
No.
we're not ready.
Yeah. And those who sometimes jump in, not understanding the complexity of the business and how much it's going to cost to be in that type
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
commercial environment.
Yeah, yeah. With my
Yeah.
first salon and even the second one, brick and mortar that I had, I was blessed to have a good, I let somebody look at the contracts and everything. I mean, the lease, and I
Mhm.
was blessed to, I guess compared now, oh boy. Yeah, because I know one space for the school, Pam, they want to charge, they say $7,000 a month.
Mhm.
Yes, but I'm not even sure about the cost of the triple net lease. I'm not even, or the gross.
Or
I'm
was
not
it
even.
gross? Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
not even sure. I'm gonna have to look at the paperwork that they sent me to see was
Yeah.
it that.
Well,
Yeah.
now you know that's something to consider when the
Yes.
numbers are thrown out there. Is this
Exactly.
triple net or is this gross?
All right. Yes, definitely. So everybody who hear this, remember that. Ask about triple net lease or gross lease. And if you missed the part, if you're just coming in, listen at the beginning. And Pam, Dr. Reeves, she explained everything to us. She broke it down. She broke it down. I appreciate that. Yeah, yes. Well, all right, Pam, I'm gonna let you get back to doing some
Okay.
quality things in the house.
Well, it was great being with you once
Yes,
again. Yes.
yes, yes. And like I said, one day we're gonna have to go back to our truth unfiltered, because there's some things
Yes.
happening in the world that we need to talk
Oh
about.
my God. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway,
Okay.
yeah, all right, love. All right, talk to you later here, and have a
Okay.
blessed weekend and happy New Year. If I don't
Happy
talk,
New Year to you
yeah,
and your viewers.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you. All right, bye,
Okay.
bye, everybody.
Bye.